All right, everybody, welcome back. Good late morning. Hope you guys are still doing well. And I want to go further into this article here on Seahawks.com. Did like the first part of it earlier, and we're going to do the second part now. Again, I just didn't want to make that video or any one video on my channel to be overly long. I sometimes I let videos get carried away and they get over 20 minutes, and I hate it. I think people don't like it. So I thought I'd go ahead and just cut it in half. This video is sponsored by Prize Picks. So, yeah, we ended things with the, Bud Clark pick. So, that was a pick that the team was excited about, and I buy it. I think Bud Clark being a second-round value is about right, and, the only thing from the lead up to Bud Clark that is kind of a mystery is the player that Kirchner really liked at the second round that he missed out on that bummed him out. I would guess Brandon Cisse or maybe Avion Terrell, but I'm not really basing that off of anything other than just my own kind of personal bias anyway, so I don't have much there. So we fast forward to later in the second day. Jaguars take Pregnon here. Seahawks are 8 picks away. There are a few more upsets in the 90s, and the upsets are basically picks that they did not think were going to be made. So if you take a look at, oh, and by the way, the one thing about the third round here, remember, the other player the Seahawks said they were thinking about taking in the second, the other player they had a second round grade on was a pass rusher. Well, if you look at the back end of the second round, the highest pass rusher that went, or the lowest pass rusher that went was Akas. Maybe it was him. But the way the article words it, it implies that it was somebody later than that, and there were no pass rushers taken after Akas at 55. So it's implied that the other player they liked in the second round was somebody that went early third. I'm guessing it's Kieron Crawford, who went to the Raiders 3 picks later. So that may have been the other player we were thinking about getting. The other guy would be Romello Height. I don't think we wanted a player like that. He doesn't fit. And the next edge was Barham. Maybe it was him, I guess, but I think we would have traded up to get Barham if we valued him that highly, so I don't think it was that. I'm guessing that it was Crawford, and I'll tell you, if this team was going to either get Bud Clark or Kieron Crawford, I'm very happy they got Clark. I like that way better. So, if true, big. Big if true. All right, so they get into the 90s, and one thing that is mentioned here is there's a few more major upsets. And looking at the draft in the 90s, Kalon Black could definitely be an upset. I definitely viewed him as a day 3 guy. Keegan Trost, I think, is something of an upset. Some people would say Eli Raridon because he's a blocking tight end. But maybe you could step back into some of the late 80s stuff. Will Kamarick was a little bit of a surprise, I recall. Xavion Thomas threw me for a little bit of a loop, so it could be a few of those. But definitely always interesting to speculate on what that might be. There's some stuff about how McDonald's dad was actually in the draft room this year. Um, there are also picks that don't go Seattle's way, including a defensive player they were considering at 96 going late in the third round. You look at late in the third round, the defensive players that went ahead of Seattle's pick would be what? Barham. So maybe Barham was the guy they were thinking about taking at edge in the late third. And who else? It's mostly offensive players. Dalen Everett, that would be the other strong candidate, right? Dalen Everett, Jyshawn Barham, maybe Jacoby Thomas, but Thomas went after they traded back from 96 anyway. So if I had to guess, I would say it's probably Barham or Everett. If you like sports, then the best way to make them even better and more exciting is using the Prize Picks app, where it always feels good to be right. Prize Picks makes daily fantasy simple. Just pick more or less on your favorite players and build lineups with a few taps. Whatever sport you're into, and obviously we are now firmly into the NFL offseason, so we're all about baseball. We got some basketball, we got some hockey, whatever it is you like. Prize Picks gives you a fun way to stay locked in while you're watching. Definitely make sure to use the promo code HMA. Prize Picks is hooking up users with $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. If you use that promo code, that is HMA. I've had a great time on Prize Picks so far, so definitely get on over to it, check it out, and make sure to get your lineups. And don't forget about Team Picks, where you can pick winners, spreads, and totals on any major game. So download the app now, use HMA, and get on over to Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And remember, always gamble responsibly. All right, so you get past that, and there's more talk about how every time they think about trading back, they don't get a good offer. They're kind of kicking our ass, aren't they? And that's not him saying that things are going badly. That's him, I believe, saying that these trade offers are not to our taste. They're trying to pull one over on us. All right, so Miami takes Bell at 94. They're still talking about trade back from 96. They finally find a trade they like. So this was the Steelers trade, 96, in exchange for 99 and a 6th round pick. So that was the trade that got them to move. And the thing about this trade is that it's okay, right? The Jimmy Johnson trade says chart says we lose it. The other chart, God, I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head. David Hill, something like that. It's something. No, Rich Hill. The Rich Hill chart says we won the trade, but it's pretty close. So if that's considered to be the trade that is worth making, think about how bad the other trade offers were. And that just speaks to the fact that trade backs in the modern NFL, unless you're picking really high, they don't net the value they used to. All right, so they almost trade back again, but the team that was looking to trade up wanted Gennings Dunker, who Pittsburgh takes at 96. Note that they don't say anything about the Seahawks having wanted Dunker, so if I had to guess, because I know a lot of Seahawks fans really wanted Dunker, and they were really bummed out when we traded out and didn't get him because we traded out, I kind of feel like this team probably didn't scout him. I feel like this team probably didn't even consider Dunker. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being frustrated with that, but one thing this Seahawks team has said is that one of their big mistakes was looking at too many players pre-draft. They choked up and they've been better for it, but sometimes that means there are guys that you maybe should have looked at that you didn't. All right. So a little bit later, they're talking about how the fact that they don't have any 4th or 5th round picks the next day. And then at 8 p.m., they take Julian Neal. And there's some talk about how Nick Perry was a former Seahawks coach and coached Neal at Arkansas last year. So there's a little bit of a through line there. And I think that there's some more stuff here that kind of indicates why, because there was that story about how Julian Neal didn't get all the team hats before the draft started. So he just only got one, and it was the Seahawks, because he felt like they were the team most likely to take him. They met him at the combine, and apparently they really liked what they saw, and he believed them when they said they really liked him, and that he was correct to believe them. So that was day 2. Definitely fun, definitely interesting. And I think we did a pretty good job speculating on what some of the close calls and the surprises and the disappointments may have been, but we'll never know for sure. Again, I want to stress that. All right, so you get to day 3 here, and we get to the back end of the 4th round here. And based on the way the article is worded, the indication is that when they get to the back end of the 4th round, with the 49ers taking Prysock with, I think, the second to last pick of the 4th, the Seahawks have one player left with a 4th round grade, and it's Beau Stevens. He is the one guy, according to this article, because this article says he's well above the rest of the field on their draft board. And we know later that they thought he was a 4th round player. So this is what moves them. They see that player, Beau Stevens, and they're like, hey, we think that guy should go in the 4th. We're in the 5th round now. We should move heaven and earth to get him because we think that he can help us now and later. And it's good value. So they talk about how they have a lot of compensatory picks next year, so they have extra draft capital to trade to try to move up here. So they know that Stevens won't be there at 188, so they're going to have to move up, and they are. So they get through a few more picks here. They get through a few more picks that are not Beau Stevens. And at 11:10 a.m., Schneider tells the room the Seahawks are going to acquire pick 148, sending that future 4th to Cleveland as compensation. Too much talent there for them to ignore. Beau did have a top 30 visit, which I believe we knew about. Yeah, that was one of them that we knew about. And Again, they talk about how the compensatory pick game, and he even says it was their plan to play the compensatory game. And that's, I think, pretty clear based on their actions. So they get Beau Stevens, and there's really not much to say here other than just that. They targeted the one player they thought was a steal in the 5th, and they were like, let's do what it takes to get him. So now we've got a couple of 6th-round picks left still, and it fast forwards to 12:42 p.m., 11 picks away from the 188 pick. Let's see here. So they talk a little bit about the Lombardi Trophy. They're playing clips from Dumb and Dumber. Going through here, and then they end up trading back with the Jets to pick up an extra 7th-round pick. Moving back 11 picks to pick up a late 7th-round pick. The value is debatable, and it's pretty close because none of this stuff is all that valuable. But again, this alludes to, and I don't think this article specifically calls this out, but this team wanted extra 7th-round picks so they could secure UDFAs they really liked that they knew they were not going to be able to get, because they are not a team that is appealing for UDFAs right now. And as they move into the 6th round, they start talking about UDFA stuff. And I think the implication is that they know that they're not going to get the best ones. So therefore, they need to do some stuff to make sure that they get those guys anyway. Rams trade up with the Eagles 2 picks in front of us, and they take CJ Daniels. And there was a little bit of concern in the draft room. The Seahawks were going to get sniped by the Rams because they thought that maybe the Rams, who ended up picking 2 picks ahead of us, wanted Emmanuel Henderson, but they picked a different receiver. So that's interesting. They actually thought Emmanuel Henderson, who was not a player that was on my radar pre-draft, might actually get picked up by somebody else. So there's probably something there that I just didn't pick up on, because I try to look at every player that I believe is going to get drafted if possible. I know I'm going to miss a few, but it is notable that the Seahawks were not the only team. They didn't think they were alone. So then they draft Emmanuel Henderson. It takes a little while for the phone call to get through. They get the voicemail a couple of times. And the special teams coach is the guy who's really excited here, which makes sense because that's what Henderson does. And then a little bit later, we get Burt Cold in there talking about some stuff as well that is not directly related to the draft. They get to 216, and then they trade back to Green Bay for a couple of 7th-round picks. Again, just trying to hoard the ability to get those UDFAs that they covet, UDFA caliber players. But at 301, they get Andre Fuller, Toledo cornerback, a player that they did genuinely believe was worthy of being a draft pick, as has been said elsewhere. And this is something that genuinely excites them. This is not just some throwaway pick. They actually like Fuller and think that he can be good in this league. So the Vikings select Gerhardt, the Seahawks draft Fuller, and we do get voicemail a couple times again, so that's kind of a recurring trend here. All right, so Andre Fuller gets drafted, more excitement here, more hype. And then we get to the next pick at 242, and one of the top players left on the board for them. So this was actually another pick that they claim came from value. This is another pick, another player that they thought would get drafted, and somebody that they think is genuinely of value, Devin Eastern. He also fits a need, but they want to stockpile depth and get maybe true nose tackles. And they also want to be able to manage the practice workload of players like Reed and Williams. So they're thinking about that stuff too, which is great. And yeah, it's notable because if you buy this article, and I understand that some people are going to say, I don't believe everything, or I don't believe most of the things in this article, but they're saying that they really liked him. They're saying that they thought there was something notable and special here. And they're trying to say this wasn't just a throwaway. This was a situation where they viewed him as being one of the BPAs. All right, so we get the Eastern pick, and let's see here. We got 1 pick left, right? The Ravens drafted Evan Bierston, and apparently that was a player we were thinking about targeting for UDFA, so there was a little bit of a disappointment. Not a lot, obviously, but apparently that was a player that they liked enough to consider inviting into camp. And one thing that's kind of notable here is they give the analytics department the opportunity to call Michael Dansby. So the implication that some people have taken from that is that the Seahawks analytics department liked Dansby, so they wanted to let them handle the call. So that is kind of notable, and some people are going to take different stuff away from that. And that's basically the article. I just always find this stuff to be compelling and interesting, even if we have to sometimes guess. But sometimes we don't have to. Sometimes the article actually spells stuff out really well. All right, so let me know what you guys think about all this. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. More videos coming soon. But yeah, that is the annual John Boyle article. It's a lot of fun. I really like going through it and very educational.